This is Standing Watch. And now, Evangelist Norbert Link.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Do you wonder what 2026 will bring us, how it will look like? Is President Trump really going to continue to destroy the old world order, as the title of this program suggests? Recently, the Daily Mail published a very interesting article on December 27th, which was written by Andrew Neil. And he wrote the following, and I'd like to quote just a few excerpts from this rather lengthy article. This was a year, 2025, the old world order ended. The order that had defeated Nazi Germany, then went on to see off Soviet communism. This old order is being swept away, for no good reason, by an American president with no knowledge of history, little grasp of geopolitics, and scant regard for the principles of democracy and freedom. A president whose only concern is furthering the narrow, short-term interest of an isolationist America. It is a ruthless, unprincipled application to foreign policy, in which everything is reduced to a deal, and nothing matters but power, money, success, and self-interest. Attitudes that mark the death knell of an old world order. To be replaced by what? The coming year will improve our comprehension of what is in store. Next year will hasten America's retreat from Europe, which will increasingly be left to its own devices, as President Trump focuses his attention and American power on the Western Hemisphere, where he has imperial ambitions. That is why, as 2025 draws to an end, he has assembled a massive armada off the coast of Venezuela. The real goal, of course, is to topple Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, whose regime has impoverished the country, even though it sits on the biggest oil reserves in the world. And of course, in the meantime, now for the first time, Trump actually attacked a harbor within the country of Venezuela. Blew it up, so he said. Trump's aim is also to bring down the flailing communist regime in Cuba, the article goes on to say, which is just as much an economic basket case as Venezuela. Trump's aim is to surround America with governments that will do its bidding. He's already achieved that in Panama, well, kind of. I don't think we have heard the last word on this one yet. Trump has indicated Colombia could be next if Venezuela falls, which I believe is likely. Argentina is already in hook to Washington with $20 billion of US support for its currency. Canada will remain under pressure to fall in line with whatever is Trump's latest whim, and I believe he still wants Canada to become the 51st state of the United States. Even Greenland is still in his sights. He's just appointed a new envoy who has described his job as a volunteer position to make Greenland a part of the United States. The Danes, under whose control Greenland falls, are increasingly nervous. The more Trump concentrates on his own backyard, the more the US retreat from Europe will gather pace. European leaders have still to grasp the immensity of the geopolitical shift that is now underway. I think they are beginning to see that. They may not necessarily admit it openly, but I think they are seeing it already. It goes on to say, it isn't just that the European leg of NATO can no longer count on US military when the chips are down. The fact is that Trump's America is no longer even on our side. A harsh reality that will become apparent as next year unfolds. The coming year will see the effective end of US financial and military aid to Ukraine. It already started to dry up this year. If Europe means what it says about standing by Ukraine, then in 2026, it will have to become Europe's war, without American backup. Despite all the supportive rhetoric, it is by no means clear Europe's leaders are up for this. I have little hope, the author says, and I would agree. I have little hope of peace breaking out in Ukraine. Although Putin is the real roadblock to peace, the Russian dictator knows Trump will blame Ukraine and its European backers for the lack of progress. He expects Trump to throw his toys out of the pram in frustration sometime in the first half of 2026 and depart the scene, saying it's now on Europe to handle the conflict, while he doubles down on the Western Hemisphere. This will hand the advantage to Putin, which is why 2026 is so dangerous. Russian cyber attacks and sabotage in Europe, which increased this year, will become endemic next year. Russian drones have recently flown over Poland, Germany, and Denmark, causing civilian airports to shut. And of course, those drones have also flown over other Western countries. These gray zone provocations will intensify next year, designed to intimidate Europe into loosening its commitment to Ukraine. In the next 12 months, we will discover if Europe has a backbone to resist them. Trump's presidency is now being rocked by a cost of living crisis. His mega movement is now gripped by low-intensity civil war. The bookies reckon there's an 80% chance the Republicans will lose the House come to November midterm elections. I believe the chance is even higher than just 80%. If in 2026 it doesn't at last dawn on Europe, including Britain, that we are on our own, then I doubt it ever will, at least not before it's too late. And I believe Europe is awakening. They are waking up to that fact, and they are moving on becoming, now listen carefully, the most powerful economic and military might, surpassing the United States. That is what's prophesied in your Bible, and that is what we have been telling you for decades. A war will break out, ultimately between Europe and America is going to lose that war, believe it or not. When it comes to Ukraine and the summit, which was a disaster and which was clearly a failure, and it was clearly going to be a failure before it even started, here's an article by Bild Online dated December 29. It was a commentary by Paul Ronsheimer. One day after the summit in Mar-a-Lago, one thing is clear above all: Vladimir Putin remains unyielding on the crucial issues. He is not budging an inch in the negotiations. The friendly atmosphere of the meeting between Trump and Zelensky cannot disguise the fact that nothing has changed regarding the fundamental positions. And of course now Putin claims that Ukraine had attacked his residence, and Trump jumped on that, saying, oh, that's terrible that Ukraine did that. Of course Ukraine says, no, absolutely not, we didn't do that. And then Trump came back and says, well, maybe the story isn't true. The article continues. A Ukrainian government insider told Bild, we can hold countless meetings, have dozens of phone calls, but one thing remains unchanged. Putin wants the entire Donbass and much more. He has nowhere clearly stated that he wants peace. A Ukrainian diplomat familiar with the talks told Bild, after phone calls with Putin, we always experience the same pattern. Trump subsequently reverts to the Russian demands, even though he had previously shown considerable understanding. Back and forth it goes. How are we supposed to agree to a peace that is effectively tantamount to surrender? While Europe will be involved, it remains unclear whether European states would be willing to take real military risks, especially in light of Russian threats to consider Western troops as legitimate targets. In Ukraine, there is unity within the government and the military. Nothing indicates that Putin is willing to make genuine compromises. A Ukrainian military officer told Bild, the intensity of the Russian attacks on all fronts speaks volumes. And so Welt Online added on December 29, The meeting between Trump and Zelensky ended without any discernible breakthrough. But something very interesting has happened now. And that brings me back to the first article I quoted to you regarding Trump's destruction of the old world order. Because listen to the reaction from Russia. Express wrote on December 29, Russia believes Donald Trump wants to destroy Europe, as the president sparks criticism for his handling of peace talks with Ukraine. Media in Moscow is hailing Trump's stance, with the newspaper Pravda saying, America no longer sees our country as a threat. The threat is now a militaristic Europe. He sees Europe as a liberal stronghold that must be destroyed to make America great again. Now that's the Russian perspective. Is that also the European perspective? Will that become the European perspective in 2026 and beyond? It undoubtedly will, because as we know from the Bible, Europe is ultimately going to attack America. Why? Because they are going to be concerned that America is about to destroy Europe. That is, my friends, what the Bible tells you. That is, my friends, what you can expect to happen in 2026 and beyond. Thank you for listening. This is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.
Standing Watch is a presentation by the Church of the Eternal God, P.O. Box 270519, San Diego, California 92198. More information is also available at our website, eternalgod.org.